Hi, you guys. Today we are going to discuss some of the more common prejudices that I've encountered actually in our spiritual communities. It's kind of interesting, so stay tuned. And if you've never been here before, welcome. My name is Susan. I was born clairvoyant and had a really crazy time growing up because of it. And then in 2017, I had a near-death experience, and now this is what I do for a living. I mentor spiritually awakening women. And I went on an amazing retreat a couple weeks ago. And some of these folks are like literally the best in the business, world-renowned psychics, people who work with angels and shamans, and some of whom I had waited decades to meet, actually. But one of the most interesting experiences I had came from amongst the other attendees. And it's this. So nearly every single time I mentioned that I live in DC, often instead of an actual verbal response, I would far more frequently get an actual sound effect. Like oh, or like ooh, or oh, something like that. I would far more frequently, instead of getting something verbal, I would get some kind of a negative sound back, because I live in DC. Now, I can tell you guys a couple things. I carry a huge fractal of Athena, and she is the goddess of war and wisdom. She was highly involved in government. It makes sense that I was born in DC. She's a huge part of my makeup. And I look at my city and I'm like, well, it is perfect. We really do. We really could use more spiritual anchoring, rather than, oh my gosh, I've got to flee. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. It made me kind of think about how just because we do travel in sometimes broader or looser spiritual circles, or what some may call New Age, after thinking about it, there actually are some prejudices, I guess you could call it, that are actually kind of commonplace. And that taps into the one or two of them that I wanted to talk about. So kind of that goes along with DC. And again, I kind of heard this through retreat, where it's almost as if Republican has become a dirty word amongst us. And to me, this is kind of like, you know how they have racial profiling? Well, this is almost like political profiling. I was raised in a super Republican household, and I can tell you, I can vouch, my parents are such loving people, and they are Republicans. You know, my son is so unique in so many different ways, and one of them does seem to be that he's going to be gay and possibly transgender. And my Republican and Catholic, that's another one, forgot. My Republican and Catholic parents love him to pieces. So that's one of the things that I wanted to mention. And the second actually does tie into Catholicism, but more broadly speaking, is religion in general. That, I hear this even in my own group, where if you're a part of these spiritual communities, oftentimes it's like, well, forge your own way, or, spirituality means no kind of doctrine or organization versus religion. I hear that a lot, where almost feels like it's spirituality versus religion. And that is also such an oversimplification. Religion brings joy and purpose to so many. I mean, how could any one thing truly be just blanket all one way? It also makes me think of one of my closest friends. I've known her for 15 years, and I am so tremendously proud of her. She is a chaplain in the U.S. Army. And that, we talk about all the time, that is still really heavily in function, a boys' club. And she is actually the first female chaplain to ever be allowed to serve beyond the demarcation of where they're firing. And there is a term for it. I can't remember it offhand. But she's literally the first female chaplain ever to be allowed to do what she does behind, those lines where she's firing just now, just today. And as a chaplain, she is well versed in every religion. She has to be. It's her job because her soldiers could be of any religion. But that said, she is also a pastor in a very specific church of a very specific religion. And she is doing tremendous work within that system. She is bringing all of the qualities that I know so many of us hold dear, which is acceptance of all colors and all sexualities, which is ultimately radical acceptance of everyone, no matter what. She is actually bringing that spirit and those words into her homily, into a religion that's not been known to be that way. So think of that. Imagine if she shied away from that particular religion. Her words and her efforts, they would still be beautiful and they would still have impact. But in my eyes, they have even more impact because of the audiences she's actually reaching. She is speaking of such radical acceptance to people who, most of whom have been raised in that religion to not be so open-minded. And there she is. She is their pastor. And she is speaking of all of these tenets, you could call them, or values that so many of us hold so dear. And she is a Republican, and she is in the Army, and she is also a pastor in a very specific Christian religion. So I want to put that out there. It's so important to me. There is no one best way ever. And whatever brings you a feeling of purpose and value, and whatever connects you to a greater sense of self-love, if it's a certain religion, then do chase it. And if it's not, that's wonderful too. There are no rules, and you are your best guru. So I hope that gives you some food for thought. I think about it a lot, and I always want to do whatever I can to blur the lines of any lines in the sand. That makes sense. I really do believe in the ideal that there is one toothpaste tube, which you can call God, the universe, source, light, love. There's one toothpaste tube, and everything with a capital E is of that same toothpaste tube. So I love you guys. Thank you so much. Do subscribe. Do share this video if you like it. And you can also find me on Patreon. I teach classes. You guys actually tell me what to teach. And we do regular check-ins. I've also got a group called Divining Women on Facebook. And we do live Q&As every Thursday night. So find me there. I love you guys. Thank you. And see you soon.